Hi, I'm Shannon. I was invited to do a instructional demonstration on how I set up and do Fordite and Epoxy pens on my wood lathe. So today we're going to go through a few of the steps that I do in how we create these. This is not supposed to be the best way or the only way. This is just the way that I do these. So please don't think that just because somebody else does it differently that they're doing it wrong, or that there's one way better than another. And don't do anything you're not comfortable with doing. This is not a safety course. If you don't feel comfortable with it, don't do it. So first we're just going to size and cut the pen blank on the bandsaw. I like to cut these a little bit larger than I need, and then here in the next few steps you'll see why. A lot of people use a wet saw. I don't have one, so the bandsaw does a pretty good job with a fine tooth blade. After the bandsaw, we'll put it over on the lathe. This is just a simple pen chuck that holds the pen blank and then drills the hole for the insert that we'll be gluing in a moment. When you're drilling these, you want to drill fairly slow. You want to back it out periodically to clear the chips. You want to make sure that you keep your drill bit cool enough that it does not melt the epoxy or acrylic and bind up in the process. So I'll back it out, give it a few moments to cool, slide the tailstock in, and then I'll continue to drill. We'll do this for a few little series here for each blank that we're doing. This is going to be a 30-06 bolt action pen, so there will only be one section to this. Some pens have a couple of different sections that you'll do individually, and they'll go just like this. When you get to the end and you're almost about ready to break through, you want to go very, very slowly so you don't blow the end out of your blank. You want to drill that really, really slow. If you look really closely, that right there is a tiny little donut of Fordite that I picked up and moved forward, but it doesn't show well on the camera. But that's how closely I try to get it to drill. And then we go over to the CNC machine as my glue up station today. Sometimes it's my casting bench, sometimes it's my CNC table, and every now and then it's my table saw. So we just kind of move around and make room where we can sometimes. So you want to sand the brass tubes before you glue them to give it a little bit of bite. When you get the pen kit, the tubes will be really shiny and polished, but that doesn't really allow the glue to stick very well. Some people will use, like I do, a CA glue with an activator. Some people prefer to use a 5-minute epoxy like I have here. Personally, I'm not patient enough for a 5-minute epoxy. I don't want to work on something and come back tomorrow. I prefer to get the entire job, start to finish, done, typically all at one time. So once I start on something, I usually prefer to get it done. On these pen blanks, when they do the brass tubes, you'll see a lot of times people will paint those tubes before gluing them in. You can paint them black or white's usually pretty popular, or a complementary color to whatever you're turning. In some cases, your acrylic will be thin enough that you can see through the acrylic after the acrylic's been machined on the lathe. And for some things, if the brass shows through as a shiny brass color, it can be not favorable. This particular casting has got quite a bit of color in it, so I didn't really feel the need, but sometimes I do that also. We'll give it a little bit of shot of activator to speed up the curing of the CA glue on the ends there. And then we go over to the disc sander. A little bit difficult to see, but essentially I'm going to true up the ends, make sure they're nice and square. And I'm going to remove any excess to get all the way down to the brass insert. Typically when you hit that brass insert on the disc, you can kind of hear the difference in the sander when it hits that little bit of metal. It's got a little bit of a different tone to it, so you can hear it. From there, I just go over to the belt sander. And I'm not really trying to get perfectly round. I'm just knocking down the high spots. It makes the next step a little bit faster, and it's a little bit more gentle to get them knocked down like this than it is to try to go from square to round on the lathe itself. Again, if you're not comfortable with anything like sticking your fingers in a belt sander, don't do it just because you saw me do it on YouTube. But this is pretty quick, efficient way of doing that. And then on the sanding, make sure you're wearing a mask. You don't have to have a full air supplied respirator, but you at least want a very decent quality dust mask. You don't want to breathe automotive paint. You really don't want to breathe the acrylic either. So there, I'm just kind of checking to see if any really high spots that I want to knock down. Like I said, it's not really rounding it completely, just kind of getting a basic shape started. Then we go over to the lathe. I've already put this in the mandrel with the mandrel saver and the bushings. You want the correct bushing for each pen kit that you're working with. So this is got the bushings for the 30-06 bolt action pen kit. And then as you can see, I'm not really using conventional lathe tools on this. What I'm actually using is cut up scraps of sanding belt from my drum sander, because when you are done with the drum sander belts, there's always a lot of really good sandpaper left on each end. I believe this one is an 80 grit, and they're just wrapped around a Home Depot paint stick to give you a nice flat surface. And you can take a look and see, not only do I have the dust mask, but if you watch the dust coming off of the sandpaper, I also have a very high powered fan blowing all of that away from me, so I'm not breathing that mess. This is on high speed on my lathe. You'll see me every few moments. I'll stop, take a look at the shape, check, make sure that there aren't any cracks that need to be stabilized. You will see me here in a few minutes. I'll be stabilizing this with some CA glue and activator. Fun thing with Fordite, it's pretty much trying to come apart the whole time you're working on it when you're working with something that's so naturally flaky. So we'll get so far into it, we'll stabilize it with CA glue and activator, and then we'll continue on with the shaping. This will pretty much get us down to a very basic shape that we can start getting our overall shape with, and then we'll kind of go into a few other products to get the final shape. every now and then take my paint stick out and smack the sandpaper to clear the pores of the paper a little bit. This is on high speed on the lathe, so on that machine I believe I'm spinning somewhere around 2,400 RPMs. And we just continue to work it down a little at a time. Try not to be overly vigorous with it, because you can shove on that hard enough that the pen blank will just essentially explode in your hand. It's not really going to injure you as long as you have a face shield, but it's also not going to make a very nice pen. So after I go and find my activator, I'm going to go ahead and stabilize this with some thin CA glue. This is a pretty simple deal. I have a little crack, so I'm going to pull that little crack a little bit open with my finger. Glue my finger really good in the process. I'm going to stabilize the outside of it pretty much throughout, and then I'm going to hit it with the activator so that we can carry on with shaping. When you get these little cracks, if you don't stop and stabilize them, it will just continue to grow until you no longer have a usable piece. So that's why it's important to every now and then just stop the lathe, turn it by hand, give it a quick little look. Right here I'm just checking tension on the tailstock, make sure that I've got a good tension without squeezing it so hard that I'm going to cause cracks to come up. And I'll go back to shaping. We'll continue on until we get a happy overall shape. When we move on to the next step, we won't do a lot more shaping. We'll fine tune it a little bit, but we're gonna mostly get our shape right here with the paint stick and the 80 grit. And one thing to note, anybody who's familiar with the lathe may have already noticed, I'm actually standing on the wrong side of the lathe when I'm doing this. I prefer to do that just because the directional turn of the lathe has it rotating away from me at the top. What that essentially does is it gives me a little bit more control, as opposed to having the sandpaper pushed back into my hand. It's kind of pulling it away from me on the top. It gives me a pretty good control, so I like that. I do also just like this here. I'll turn it over, work from the bottom. I kind of go back and forth. When you're working at the bottom, it's kind of pushing towards you. It's kind of nice that you have a pretty good visual for what the shape is starting to turn out to with looking at it from the different angles. And when we're doing this, we're pretty much, not only are we wanting to make sure we get our shape, we want to start getting pretty close to the size of our bushings that we set in the mandrel to begin with. Those bushings are going to be the size of your pen hardware when the project all comes together. You don't want it to be mismatched with the hardware, so you want to start paying close attention to how big your diameter is at each end. You can have some fun with the shape of the piece out in the middle, but those end diameters are pretty much determined by your pen hardware, so they're a little bit important to pay attention to. stop it, take a look, check for any areas that might need stabilizing. When I'm feeling these ends, I'm actually putting my fingers over it, see how it feels in comparison with the bushing. Make sure I don't have any jagged or sharp edges that are going to need more attention. When you assemble your final pen, you really want it to be nice and smooth feeling in the hand. You don't want it to be sharp or uncomfortable in any way. We should be getting pretty close to about our final shape. I'll grab this extra piece of sandpaper that does not have the paint stick wrapped around it. I'll get into a few little areas. One area I try to pay close attention to, again, is going to be that transition right there at your bushing. You'll stop the lathe completely and turn a few things by hand here and there. Right there, I'm not actually sanding on the pen. What I'm actually doing is removing a little dribble of CA glue from when I stabilized that a few minutes ago to make sure that I'm true to the bushing and not the CA glue. Also worth mentioning, these bushings, you can sand the shape out of your bushing, so honestly, they're a couple of dollars. Periodically, when they get worn out, you want to replace them, get fresh, clean, sharp edges on your bushings. There are different strategies people use to extend the life of the bushings. You're just going to have to replace them every now and then. So when you're doing that, you want to kind of really start paying attention, make sure you don't have any sharp gouges, any rough edges. You want to start transitioning that down to your final shape. Here are the steps that I will be going through with wet sanding. I go from 80 all the way up to 10,000. Tried to show you the different grits. I don't know how well that will show on video. I get a little kit from Amazon that has, I don't know, 20 or so of every one of these sizes. Showing them off in front of the fan's probably not the greatest idea. But the little kit comes with a stack of each size and several little pieces that you can mount them on your drill if you were sanding bowls and things of that nature. For this, I'm going to do a bowl of water, drop them in there, start wet sanding, and I'm going to go wet sanding all the way from 80 on up. I will be stopping in the middle of these grits to add CA glue to stabilize it, and we also will be doing CA glue finish on this pen. CA glue hardens up very nicely. It's a very durable finish with a nice high gloss to it. So it's very good. I use it on quite a few of my pens. When we're sanding this, our primary goal with sanding is that each sandpaper only has a task of removing the scratches left from the grit previous to it. So after I go from an 80 grit and I skip forward, let's say 150, I don't want the 150 to be shaping the piece. I want the 150 to be removing the scratches from the 80 grit. And then when I go to the 180, same thing. I don't want to shape with it. I just want to remove the scratches from the 150. And that will be the same all the way throughout your grits. So when we do it that way, as long as we're only removing the scratches from the previous grit, you can go through 10 different grits of sandpaper very, very quickly. It doesn't take very long at all, and the sandpaper lasts for many, many projects. When I'm in these lower grits, I'm not as cautious with it. You'll see when I get into the higher grits, I'll start wiping with a rag in between every grit, make sure that I'm not carrying over any trash or debris that will keep me from getting a smooth finish. Like I said, I don't worry about it as much with the more coarse papers, but when you get into detailed fine work, you'll definitely want to do that. And you'll also notice as I'm going back to my water and cleaning these sandpaper discs, kind of take my finger, rub all of the excess out of that, and clear the sandpaper, because this particular material likes to gum up the sandpaper. So cleaning it really well in the water helps the longevity of that. And here we are, we're going to go ahead and start doing the cleaning in between grits at this point. And here in a minute we'll go ahead and get our CA glue ready, do a stabilizing coat on there. I think what I'm doing here is just setting aside the various ones that we've already used, make a little bit more room. My stack got all jumbled up. Having them all floating in the water together can be a little bit messy. Sometimes I'll have them on my little side table that you can't really see in this video. And just like with the wheels, you're just smoothing and smoothing, going through all of the different stages. Give it another wipe to keep it clean while you're sanding when you get closer to the final stages of the sanding. You want to make sure you start keeping that clean. Still checking it for little cracks. Make sure you don't have any imperfections, anything that needs to be repaired as you're going through. Notice when I get ready to do my CA glue, I'm going to go to the slowest speed possible on this machine. This machine doesn't turn down as slow as my larger machine. This one, I think the lowest speed I can turn on this one is, I think, somewhere around 600 RPM. So when I first put the CA glue on, I'm actually going to put it on with a little plastic baggie. Once again, I'm going to glue my fingers really well because my rubber gloves do not react well with CA glue at all. So I'll use the little plastic baggie. I'll get some on my fingers. No big deal. I'll get that off later. And the little plastic baggie gets a good thick heavy coat on there for the first couple of coats. And here in a few minutes you'll see that I transition away from the little plastic baggie. I actually start using blue shop rags. They give you a lighter coat, but they lay it down real flat and nice. But when you want a good thick heavy coat, that plastic baggie is pretty nice for that. You can also use a medium CA glue. This is thin throughout this. I never did go to the medium other than gluing the brass. The medium will also give you a nice thick base coat to work with. I just didn't do it on this one. I don't have anything against it. I do it on a lot of my pens. Just happened to have the thin right there next to me as I was going through this. So we're not going to go all the way back down to 80. We're going to start smoothing our CA finish at 1000. Notice I reach over there, I turn my speed all the way back up. I want to keep my sandpaper moving for the most part. You don't want to stay in one spot and allow that to burn through your finish layer. You want to keep that moving. You want to keep your paper relatively clean, considering the water is not as clean as when we first started, but you want to keep it wet, keep it moving. Make sure you're wiping it down periodically. When I'm doing this, it's difficult to show on video, so you really can't see it. I'm looking for streaks and shiny spots. So if I see any shiny little areas across that finish that I've just sanded, that's a pretty good indication of low spots in my CA glue finish that have not yet been sanded. So when you get the entire thing all the way sanded smooth, there's no more shiny spots, you have a smooth finish. You no longer have those little divots and low areas in your finish. So I'll stop it, take a look, give it a little bit more sanding. So this goes back to every sandpaper should only remove the sanding marks of the paper before it. So as long as I get my 1000 grit work done correctly here, each of my next steps in sanding should just be a quick, easy, just knock the high spots off from the sanding of the previous grit. If you go too fast on your 1000 grit, you leave little dimples and divots in your finish. those higher grits are going to take a lot more effort to get that corrected. So we'll slowly turn it. We'll give it a good look over. Make sure we're happy with it before we move on with the next steps. So at this point, I'm back to the lowest speed on the lathe. I'm going to wander over across the shop for a minute here, find me a blue shop towel. So I like to tear off a little small piece, fold it up, usually fold it a couple of times, so I've got a section of about 4 layers. I still end up gluing a little bit of it to my finger even with the 4 layers, but it cuts down on it some. You put 1 layer on there with that, then you're going to set it aside. You don't want to reuse that towel after you've done 1 layer. You'll just get a new little piece of towel, hit it with the activator. You're only putting a few drops at a time on your towel. You don't want to soak your towel. Just a few little drops is all that it takes to get a nice smooth layer on there. I have had people tell me different numbers on how many layers to put on there. As when you do your CA finish, I usually end up doing about 4 or 5. Some people swear by a specific exact number. Some people do 4 of thick and 4 of thin, and personally I just get a good amount of material on there to where I'm confident that I'm not going to blow through it in the rest of my sanding and polishing process. Stop, take a look at it, make sure you don't have any spaces that didn't take the finish very well. We'll get started back up. We're going to go all the way back up to full speed on the lathe. And then we'll start working through our grits. Like I said, starting at 1000 here. If I remember correctly, I think I do 1000, 1200, 1500, 2000, 3000, 5000, 10,000, and then a final buff that you'll see. So what I'm doing here, I stop the lathe. I'm actually going to go back and forth crossways with my sanding to make sure that I don't have any remaining scratches that are linear from the 1000. Give it a wipe down, take a look at it, see how we're looking. And we'll start working through all of our other grits. And then, like I said, each of your remaining grits, you only want to have to remove the scratches left from the previous grit from here on out. So it's not a very time-consuming thing. Just work up through them. Keep your paper wet. Keep your pen blank clean. Make sure you keep wiping it down in between grits with that clean rag, cleanish rag. And then we'll go on to the next one. You'll kind of notice as I'm going through these final stages, they go really, really fast. You can probably go through 12 grits of sandpaper 10 times as fast as you can go through 3 grits of sandpaper. It's just worth having all of the different stages in between, so no specific grit has to work overly hard to get through the scratches of the previous. Give it another quick wipe and we're on to the next. And just a quick little sand, keeping that paper moving, making sure you're not drying it out. You'll see I take the paper and rotate it around, get a fresh area on the paper itself, and also an area that still has more water on it. When one section starts to feel a little bit warm in your hand, you don't want that. You want to make sure that you're moving your paper around, keeping the wet part of the paper in contact with the pen blank. Give it a wipe down. Now we're up to about 5,000. So we'll hit it with the 5,000. Usually when I get to 5 and 10,000, I like to give it just a little bit of extra time, just to try to make sure that I'm going to get that really glossy finish that we all love to see at the end. We'll give that a wipe down, and then we'll hit it with our 10. Very difficult to see in the video here, but when you get to 10,000, it should already look like glass. The difference between 10,000 and buffing should be very, very minimal. You should not be noticing a huge difference. If you're still seeing any scratches at all when you're at 10,000, you probably need to back up a couple of grits and try again. You missed a step. So I'm going to walk across the shop again. You can go find my buffing compound. I'll be right back. Shop organization is not a strong point for me, I have to admit. Really should do better. So this is a plastic polish, Novus. It's an inexpensive product you can get on Amazon. I ended up with it on accident. I wanted free shipping on something that I was ordering on Amazon, and they said I needed to add another product to my basket. So I went for the cheapy plastic polish kit, and the stuff has actually worked out to be really good. I'm very pleased with it for an inexpensive, easy to obtain product. And the buffing, when you're doing your buffing, again, you notice you want to keep that kind of moving. You don't want to allow it to get too hot. You can burn your piece. Then you're going to be going back to the drawing board, starting over, possibly removing the finish entirely, or at least backing up a few steps and sanding. So don't allow your polishing compound to dry out on the paper towel. Don't allow it to get too hot. And then this one's actually a very, very liquid product. It's clean and protect is the final stage of this polishing system. This is a 3-step system. There's a heavy scratch remover also that I don't typically have to use when I'm sanding up to 10,000 grit. I think the heavy scratch remover would probably be good for removing oxidation on headlights and things like that, but it really doesn't do anything when you've already sanded up to 10,000. So I almost always skip that one. Stop the lathe, give it a spin, look it over, see how it feels. If you see anything that looks like it needs to be smoothed, you're probably going to have to back up and start sanding again if you feel any odd ridges, anything like that. And here we have final finished pen. This is after it's all been assembled and pressed together. So that's the whole pen.